Hey guys, I'm excited about this one. Norway. I just spent 2 full months in Norway, and I have so many thoughts. Some things that surprised me in a really positive way, and some things that surprised me in a really negative way that I just did not like. Honestly, one thing that scared the crap out of me. Like, I'm gonna jump all over the place here, and I'm gonna have some questions for locals. And if you've ever visited Norway, I'm gonna want your take as well. For context, my name's Camden. If you're new here, I move to a new country every single month, and I'm normally making travel tip videos, but this is the Unfiltered series. And my intent and goal in this series is to be as raw and unfiltered as possible. I think we get a lot of glamour online, but I think we do a really bad job as a species talking about the things that are kind of at the heart of culture and at the heart of like humanity. And I just love this like as a learning opportunity. So I'm really looking forward to engaging with you guys in the comment section. Like, this series is the most meaningful thing that I get to do in this crazy life that I'm living. So I hope that it's thought provoking and hope that it's interesting to you in some way. But let's start with a couple of different pieces. One, for context, I got to spend a full month in Oslo in June and all of July in Bergen. So that's the lens that I was looking and experienced Norway through. And I recognize that those two places aren't representative of all of Norway, but it's a good starting point, and it's what many visitors from out of country will experience. So starting with the thing that surprised me in a really positive way, it's no surprise that the nature here is unbelievable. It's gorgeous. So many people come to Norway to see the fjords and just all the scenery that this place has to offer. But what surprised me in such a positive way was the connection to nature. And I don't mean just how people connect to the nature, but how society as a whole invests and makes sure that people have access to the nature. And there's a distinction there that is really important, and it impacts society in a big way. So tell me if you feel like I'm off base here, but I'm somebody who I've always felt very privileged to have good access to nature. I grew up in Colorado, and we've got gorgeous nature. The Rocky Mountains are stunning, but I've never seen a place that does such a good job providing the communities with access to nature. And when I say communities, not just the wealthy people, not just the people with cars or who can afford to go and do high cost things. I mean everybody. And an example of this is in Oslo. The public transit system is exceptional. And it's so unique because it's sprawling. It really does a good job like transporting you to pretty far compared to like what most public transit systems will do. But it does such an incredible job of putting you right on like the footstep, or like through the front door, I should say, of the nature. And an example is like in Oslo, one of the trams, or excuse me, one of the metros, the last stop, it drops you off at this lake. And it's a local hotspot. I mean, just filled with people all the time, it seemed like. And it's not just that they say, okay, here's the nature, go enjoy. They also are investing in saying, hey, we're going to make sure that there are like very smooth paths for people to walk around. So it's very accessible. And we're going to light these paths so everybody feels safe, regardless of the hour that you're visiting. And we're going to add like nice and safe, clean bathrooms and everything that you would need to reasonably enjoy and engage with nature. And it's so clear that that has an impact of how people engage, not just with the nature, but then with each other. There's like this sense of peace amongst the community and the people, and almost like a sense of like stoicism. Like it's just beautiful and so hard to articulate and describe. If you somebody who's experienced what I'm talking about, feel free to let me know and see if you can explain it better than I just did. But it's such a beautiful part of the culture. And I love that they seem to be emphasizing that. And I wish that other countries would take a page out of their script and do a better job providing everybody with access to the nature. Because I think we can all agree that when you are in nature, it's special. We're more reflective. We, think and just connect in a different way than when we're engaging with cities. And there's place for both, but it's really special. And I could honestly just go on and on. Like there's so many examples of how they do such a great job giving you access to the nature. Like some of the parks, some of the hikes that you do, there's art installations embedded in the nature, which why would you put art in nature if you're not just like asking people to basically spend time there and encouraging them to like be here, right? Don't just go on a hike, sit and take in art, think, right? Art is all about feeling, right? We all have different tastes in art. Some things make us feel good. Some things make us feel bad. Some things we're like, that's art, right? But the whole point is it makes you feel. And I think there's something to be said about integrating art with nature and how, again, like it's stimulating in a way that you don't realize that you're missing. And it's not to say that you can't and aren't stimulated when you're just in nature without art, but it's so clear that there is intention there. And another one, like in Bergen, there's this kind of like local area where people are swimming, and it's beautiful. And there's this weird box, and we can't really figure out what it is. Like it looks like a locker, and we get closer to it and closer, and we're like, are people really like locking their stuff up? Like this is such a safe place. Like we see everybody swimming right here. This locker is like right next to where everybody is swimming. This seems odd. Like what is this? And we go up to it, and it's not a locker. It's another way to engage with nature. It's these lockers that have canoes and kayaks in them, and you can scan your card, and for like $10, you unlock the locker and take the canoe or kayak and, go on your merry way. And that's something that I haven't seen in other places, where they are just going the extra mile every opportunity that they get to encourage and make sure that people have different ways to engage with the nature. Does that make sense? I'll stop there on that. Let's move to some of the things that surprised me in a negative way. The food. And not saying the food at the restaurants. I actually think that Norway has one of the best food scenes anywhere in the world. Like in terms of the quality, the type of cuisine, it was exceptional. Caveat there is you have to have the money to pay up for it. And it is expensive. But what surprised me in the negative way were the groceries. Typically, when you're in a society where you're saying, hey, things are really expensive in restaurants, the trick is you say, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to go grocery shopping, right? No, that's no big deal. Normally that's true, but it didn't always feel like that in Norway. Not that you couldn't go grocery shopping, but it felt like, for as nice and as put together and as much like thoughtfulness and intention that goes into everything else in this country, grocery stores seem to be the exception. It was never a fun experience. They seem to lack option, like variety of products. And I've looked into this a little bit, and I understand that there's kind of like one company that monopolizes a lot of it. So the groceries were expensive. The quality didn't seem very high. It was such a stark contrast to everything else that you experienced in Norway. And maybe that was just my experience, but locals, tell me if you feel like I'm off base here, but the groceries seem to be lacking. And I imagine that's a frustration, especially as a local person who might not be able to go and afford to eat out, often. Again, you guys got a lot of other things going for you, but that was something that really did surprise me in a somewhat negative way. But one of the things that was clear, and this kind of goes back to connecting people with the nature and the food in the restaurants, and how to, how do you find that balance, is in those summer months, gosh, the parks are just filled. People are just spending time outside. And I talked about in like my tips video, this isn't a place where you're going from destination to destination and doing things. It's about existing, the small moments. It's a city where you just, in a country where things slow down. And if you allow the time for things to develop and just take that peaceful, slow approach, gosh, like there's some just magical moments. And it's just beautiful. People exploring and just putting themselves outside and in nature and just in those peaceful environments as often as possible. We'll come back to some sauna culture in a minute, but I want to talk about one of the things that surprised me, and I guess kind of like a way where I felt misled. I think I always do a bit of research before I go to a place, obviously, to try to figure out, okay, what's the stereotype here? What kind of environment and culture am I walking into? I want to fit. I want to, to some degree assimilate, right? I want to understand how people think and live. And one of the things that comes up a lot online is that people in Norway are kind of cold, put off. It's a tough place to make friends. It's a place where people are very, they keep to themselves. And I see what people are saying, but I feel like there's a distinction that isn't being discussed, or at least I didn't come across it online. And it's that it's not that people are cold and don't want to engage. It's that it's kind of like a do not disturb culture. It's like, hey, my do not disturb sign is always on, but it's not saying that I won't engage. And it's not to say that I'm going to be rude if you do engage. I actually found the people to be very warm and welcoming, but like Sarah's my wife, if you're new, we were talking about this and we said, she articulated it well and said, it feels organic. Nobody's masking. Nobody's going out of their way to make anybody feel good. Like, do you worry about you? But we felt like we had a lot of really just warm and like deep, good conversations with people. And we did not find it a difficult place to connect with folks. And that happened in a variety of different ways. So a couple examples. One is through sauna culture. I thought going in that, okay, we're going to go into the saunas and, it's going to be quiet, where we're not going to say anything. And of course, like there are times where you do that, but we really embraced the sauna culture. Like we were there pretty much every day, and locals were sometimes talking to us. And maybe that was because they were like, okay, these folks clearly aren't from here. But they were speaking to us in Norwegian, which obviously we didn't understand. And then when they realized, oh, we're not from here, they switched to English. But, they were curious and we had good conversations. And, it wasn't just other people who were enjoying the saunas, it was even employees, at different spots, coffee shops. Like there seemed to be a warmth and connection layer that you don't actually find in a lot of other countries. Like I would always go to this one coffee shop and get this, I was getting like a matcha sunrise, like me being a basic white girl, with having like it was matcha and orange juice. And I don't know, it was good. And the barista there, like she was just razzing me, like love razzing, like, oh, I know what you want. You want another, of these. And sometimes I'd look at the menu and I'd say, do I want to try something else today? And she's like, oh, don't kid yourself. You're getting this, right? And like, that's not something that I anticipated based on what everybody says the culture is around, like, hey, we're very cold, put off. Like that was just not the experience at all. And thinking back to one of the other people that we engaged with, who was a local, this was Adesana, and he was one of the employees. He got us into a conversation where we were talking about the culture in Norway, and he was trying to explain that he loves most things about Norway, but that one of the things that's frustrating as a local on a societal level is they're slow to adapt, which I found really interesting. And you'll understand why when I talk about in a minute the thing that kind of scared the crap out of me. But this was a student, young person, kind of in his master's and studying like therapy and medicine, how to improve mental health quality, and specifically like stuff around psilocybin, mushrooms, different therapeutic methods, right? That some countries really embrace and invest research in. And his frustration was that Norway does not. And he said it was challenging wanting to go and learn that sort of thing. And it's a very educated population, but he said they need a lot of proof. They need a lot of proof before they'll go down that road of investing in research. He said that can be challenging because you're waiting for other countries to lead the way. And then once you feel like they've maybe found something, then Norway starts doing it. So that was a question for locals. I recognize that was just one conversation that I was having with somebody who was very educated on the topic he was touching on. But does that match your reality? Do you feel like you guys are slow to adapt? And this is where the thing that scared me comes into play, where I say, I don't know if I would say that you guys are slow to adapt. This was fascinating to me. I'm in Bergen, and I have this Airbnb in this just beautiful, really quiet, peaceful area of town. And it's late at night, and it's just peaceful. It's very, very quiet. to the point where you can kind of hear yourself breathe and you hear the wind and you just hear everything. And all of a sudden this noise starts and it feels like it's a noise that I'd never heard before on a scale that I'd never heard before. It kind of felt like a vacuum and it kind of felt like the building was maybe, I don't know, like gonna give in. And I'm like, Sarah and I were like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And turns out it was the trash, because in Bergen, it's a really old city and it's beautiful, but they've recently undergone like this project, invested, I think like $100 million or about $100 million into waste management, which, gosh, look at me. We're talking about trash. That's what you're doing today, is we're talking Norway trash today. So thanks for sticking with me, but get this. It's basically the series of tubes that runs underneath the city, and you throw your trash away, and then the trash cans quite literally have like tubes that vacuum your trash into the centers of the city where they're going to deal with that stuff. And I know that sounds weird. Look it up because it really is quite fascinating. And they're doing it, I guess, for a couple of reasons. One, to ensure that things do stay quiet and peaceful, because what that means, ask yourself, well, what is one of the loudest, most annoying things that happens on a daily basis? And a lot of people would say trucks, maybe garbage trucks. And in an old, beautiful, like peaceful area where the streets are all narrow and things kind of tightly packed in, a garbage truck going through those areas, like, it takes up the whole street. Traffic stops. It's noisy. It doesn't feel like it fits. So they've invested in saying, hey, now we don't have to have garbage trucks go by as often. And, you help eliminate some of the rat problems because there's not as much trash spilling over, and, less fire issues because Bergen has a lot of wooden houses and they have burned down in the past. From what I saw. So it helps in so many ways, but it's such an interesting way in contrast of saying, hey, you guys are actually kind of leading the way. From my perspective, I had never seen a system like this. And I know they're not the only ones doing this, but they really embraced it and put heavy investment into something that makes life better for people. So I just thought that was an interesting contrast. And again, it scared the absolute crap out of me. So thanks for indulging me on Norway trash. Didn't think that was where we were going to be today. Another question for locals and also anybody who's visited. I imagine it'd be very different had I visited in the winter when it was dark most of the time, but I didn't. I visited in the summer when it was just gorgeous and there was always sunlight. And it was a challenge for Sarah and I at first to figure out how to fall asleep, right? Like, our bodies were just screwed up, not only time zone wise, but it's constantly light out. And the place that we stayed didn't actually have curtains, which surprised me. And I was trying to identify, like, okay, do many people have curtains? And they had some, but it didn't seem like blackout curtains. So I'm curious for locals, one, how does it change throughout the year for you guys in terms of your energy levels and bodies adapting to the change? Is it something that you kind of have to go through and adjust to each year, or are you used to it? And if you're a tourist, somebody who's visited Norway, did you struggle adapting to the daylight or the darkness for that matter? And how is the culture change in the winter? How does it change when everything is dark for such long periods of time? And I think this kind of brings us full circle back to the access to nature. I don't know if you caught it, but when I said that the path around the lakes that they put you in were lit, I imagine that's wise, because for much of the year it's just dark, but people still want to be able to access those pieces of nature. But I'd be fascinated to know. I can't wait to get back and explore when it's dark for most of the day rather than being light. Overall, I just felt like it was a fascinating place that was constantly surprising me in mostly positive ways. Again, minus the food, minus the grocery stores, but maybe that's just me being picky. But you guys really do have such a special place. And I guess I'll end with this. If you're somebody who lives in Norway, or if you're somebody who's visited Norway, what to you is the most beautiful, magical piece of the culture that you wish other places could take a page take a page out of their script and start integrating into other cultures? Because I can think of so many, but I realize I had a short experience, and everybody's got different perspective. And if you're somebody who, again, has visited, what stood out to you? So I hope all of this made sense. If you want to watch the actual travel tips video, my Oslo one will be right here, Bergen right here. So feel free to watch those. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comment section. I look forward to engaging with y'all. And thanks for talking Norway trash with me today.